Welcome to Liberty Action Alert with Greg Seltz, sponsored by our friends at the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty here in Washington, D.C. A program that cuts through the chaos and confusion in the culture today by talking to kingdom citizenship, bold biblical principles for a robust public Christian life. And now your host, Dr. Greg Seltz.
Good day, Washington, D.C., and friends of the program all around the country. I'm Greg Seltz. Welcome to Liberty Action Alert, where every week we try to cut through the noise and take on the issues, especially the public issues that matter to you, people of faith. We try to rely on the wisdom of the Word of God for the sake of the culture and the mission of the church, or as we like to say here at the LCRL, we're trying to put our temporal liberties to work for the sake of the eternal liberties of God for all. Today we're privileged to have back on the Liberty Action Alert Mr. James Bopp Jr., whom Reuters has said, and I love this quote, he's recognized as one of the elite cadre of lawyers emerging as first among equals, giving their clients a disproportionate chance to influence the law of the land. Those are special words, Jim, I'll tell you that. And then in 2012, he was also identified as one of the top Supreme Court advocates. And of course, he had a role to play in the latest adjudication of the Dobbs case, which is what we're going to talk about today. Welcome back, Jim.
Pleasure being back, Greg. Thank you.
Do you still think Indiana has a chance this year? Got to jump in there on you.
Indiana basketball?
Basketball. Well, football first, too. But...
Well, we're up and coming in football and in basketball, where everyone thinks we're a favorite to win the Big Ten championship. So
all right. Well, I'll be thinking about you when we go head to head. All right.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Listen, the last time we talked, and we talked about this, right after it was argued in front of the court and everything. From your perspective, are you a little bit surprised by this ruling? And so what's your take on it?
Well, I've become very humble about predicting what the Supreme Court is going to do. And so realizing I can't make a prediction, then I'm not either disappointed or whatever,
right.
Or happy that my prediction, that I didn't make either turned out or didn't.
Right.
So the key factor in the Supreme Court deciding to overturn precedent is simply, are they willing? You can't make them do anything. You can't, they're in total control. They decide what issues, what cases, how they decide them. We realized we were closer than ever. We started working on model legislation, post-Roe v. Wade and all that, in preparation for the time that we are now in.
Well, I guess that's the question. What time are we now in legally? What does this mean for all the abortion or pro-life laws around the country, if anything? And then, like you said, is legislation? Because I can already tell you on the Hill, we had some pro-family bills that came up that were supposed to be, here's how we go forward, incentivizing the family, et cetera, et cetera. So legally first, where are we at? And then is legislatively the next thing?
Well, the matter as a constitutional matter has ended because there's no right to abortion in the U.S. Constitution. That means that states are free to exercise their police powers, as they did prior to Roe v. Wade, to determine to what extent abortion would be legal in their state.
Okay.
And there is no impediment to that at all. There is, of course, normal things like you can't pass a vague law that, of course, applies to all statutes, but there is nothing peculiar or particular about regulating abortion that would trigger any constitutional limitations.
Okay.
The only other caveat about what states can do is they obviously cannot do anything that's contrary to a state constitution. And we have a few states that have said, ridiculously, that there is a right to abortion in their state constitution.
Right.
And so that would limit what the legislatures can do. But and there's no federal laws that would prevent full exercise of the state authority, even though the very pro-abortion Biden administration is trying to invent and create things. They sued Idaho the other day on a ridiculous idea, but that's where we are.
Yeah, in fact, I think I read the Idaho issue, and it was like 16 weeks. For the health of the mother, so it protected the health of the mother, and it also made exceptions for rape and incest, and yet the Biden administration went after that too. I mean, it seemed like
Christian forces, since the very beginning, since the 60s, they have wanted an absolute right to abortion on demand throughout pregnancy, including even after birth, if a baby survives an abortion. They don't want to treat the baby and take care of the baby. That's what has been their goal for all these decades. They've never reached that goal, but that doesn't mean that's not their goal. And when in several states that they have, where they have a Democrat trifecta, what you have seen is repealed all abortion laws, including requiring a physician to perform the abortion, including prohibitions on partial birth abortions, including funding of abortion. In other words, they've gotten their nirvana in several states where they have control. And that's is what they would have imposed on the whole United States through the recent Women's Health Protection Act, whatever it was called. By the way, the woman word was only used in the title of that act. It was not used anywhere else in the law because, of course, as we know, they are in the process of erasing and eliminating women from our society. And so they don't want to talk about protecting women anymore.
But again, so for the challenge that is before us, I think we have to come to grips with what the challenge is. And when we can't even name what it is we're talking about, when someone can't, I mean, the bill in New York or, the New York legislature, they in effect passed an infanticide bill. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, and I think there are a lot of Christians out there who think, they think about that one case where the woman is in such dire straits or whatever case study they throw before us, and then they ramrod through things like this where the child is literally killed when it's alive coming out of the birth canal, and we can't call it what it is. It's infanticide. It's killing a person. And I think that's what I struggle with so much is the way they redefine, like you said, the Protecting Women's Health Act, and then they don't even actually use the word woman anymore. It's crazy when you can't even identify the problem. Well, go ahead.
Or who you're claiming to give rights to and protect.
Right.
And so it's men and women, I guess, are now viewed as ones that can give birth. They talk about birthing people. They talk about pregnant persons. Right. I mean, it's insane. If abortion was limited to truly rape and incest, it would be about 1% of the current, maybe 1.5% of the current abortions. If it was limited to the life and health, in other words, medically necessary is a phrase they use, abortions, you would add another 1 to 3% of the current abortions that are being performed. That's max 4.5% of the abortions for any justifiable reason. All the rest of them are elective and for terrible reasons, the sex of the baby or the race of the baby or the baby has a disability or I just can't afford one right now or whatever. I mean, I'm on my 5th abortion because I use it as a method of birth control,
right?
Rather than using birth control. So it's an unlimited abortion on demand throughout pregnancy, literally, even in some states after the baby is born, they can be killed.
Well, and like we talked about the first time, we were saying that the Dobbs case was really going after the viability issue. And like we talked about, this was one of the first times in our history where the power of the state aligned with the powerful against the weak in a situation where the weak were innocent. innocent bystanders. The child is an innocent bystander, but it's a unique person. Well, typically the state protects the weak. It protects the innocent against other folks. And this was a state-sanctioned ability to say you can dispense with it as you will. So I'm glad that the Constitution, it was eradicated as a constitutional issue. But I think you're pointing out, as we're already seeing in some of the states' issues, that this is going much deeper. I guess legislation is the next level, but there's a moral, cultural, real debate going on. And I think, what does this ruling mean for that as far as you're concerned? Or if at all, are we ready for that debate, do you think, in a lot of ways?
Well, it remains to be seen. And there are multifaceted aspects of what you are asking me about.
Okay.
And the big one that I often point to is a Judeo-Christian view, which was a very radical departure from every other religion, every other nation state, every other barbarians, or whoever that ruled the world. The radical and most consequential principle that was embraced by the Judeo-Christian ethic was that every individual human life had inherent value.
Right.
Because in every other culture, society, religion, it was not, in the individual human life was not sacred, did not have inherent value, but was relative. It was relative to the value of the person, to the clan, the tribe, the nation, the race, however they were cutting up the pie. It was always relative. And if your relative value wasn't sufficient, then you could be disposed of. For instance, in Rome, in the Roman culture, the husband was the head of the family. The husband could kill at will for whatever reason he thought was justified. Any member of the family. He could kill the wife, the son, the daughter, whoever. So, and that is because their lives didn't have inherent value. It was only relative value as judged by the patriarch of the family. And that was the way it was. And of course, slaves. I mean,
yeah,
same. But it's but the extent of the view of relative value extended not just to slaves that could be killed at will, but to family members
sure,
that could be killed at will. And of course, that view is the wellspring, the inherent value of every human life is the wellspring of all of our views about human life, for instance, and that we are opposed to racial discrimination, that we are opposed to sex discrimination, that we are opposed to discrimination based upon disability, that we don't want to categorize people based upon factors such as race or religion or whatever. Everybody has inherent value and entitled to equal protection of the laws. And of course, Roe v. Wade, well, of course, there were two great assaults on that principle. The first was slavery, and it took us centuries, ultimately, and terrible civil war to get to where we are now, where racial discrimination is illegal, slavery has been abolished. We're not perfect yet, because humans are fallible and have weaknesses. But we have gone an enormous distance on that issue. The other great assault was Roe v. Wade, which is we just marked off a whole category of people. They have no inherent value. They can be killed at will by somebody who has power over them, i.e., the consent of the woman. So that has been the second great assault on this critically important and radical notion that everybody has inherent value. If we give up on that one, we're just going to be like the barbarians or the Romans or whoever, and people's lives will be readily sacrificed because they don't have because they don't have inherent value anymore.
Yeah, they don't have the that, like you said, and that inherent value led to legal standing. And I argue this too, that that's why Darwinism is so egregious, because it's philosophically the foundation of racism. If there's this mindless survival of the species, then whoever happens to be on the top of the hill is right, as far as that's concerned. And so all this assault on the fact that God created us and God gave us inherent value and each person is precious, people need to understand, I think, that that's what's being debated deeper than whether the law comes this way or the policies come that way. And like you said, if we start going down a direction where we look at your practical value to society, which is, ultimately the secular state takes over all this nonsense, or these important questions, I should say. Then whether you're young in the womb or you're older and you're less productive, that's where I think Hitler was going with all this stuff, because the state needs the best and the brightest at the moment, and they determine who that is. That's a scary direction. Do you see, so you said Dred Scott, you brought it up, the two assaults on that principle, which I agree with. Well, we had a civil war. I mean, are we at that kind of place? Is dialogue the way to go? Do we have to get these fundamental principles reestablished? What are your thoughts about, because I know legally we're in one place, but morally and culturally, we've got a lot of work to do.
Well, the situation is on the front of whether or not we have a common agreement or common basis, for agreement among our people generally, is a big problem right now, and it's because of the radical left, the Democrats that have been totally taken over by the radical left, who are truly progressives. Progressivism is a political philosophy that is much different than liberalism. Liberalism believes in individual rights. Progressivism does not. They don't believe in individual rights. They only believe in what is good for, quote, society, end of quote. And they want experts to decide that, not the people. So they're anti-democratic. And of course, their heyday was with Woodrow Wilson and the Supreme Court in the early 1900s. And what did that lead to? It led to Buck v. Bell, where the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the forced sterilization of Buck by the state because she had mental retardation. And the court said, quote, 3 generations of imbeciles is enough, end of quote. Wow. So she had no rights because she had mental retardation to even the most basic human rights that we have, that is to be able to bear children and give birth to children. And that could be taken by the state forcibly by forced sterilization. And of course, Margaret Sanger started Planned Parenthood. She was a great progressive. She was a eugenicist, just like the court in Buck v. Bell was. And eugenics is, we want to get rid of people that are just not the right race, not have mental retardation, have whatever problems, that we don't value them. Well, and according and Sanger included Southern Europeans. She thought they were, in quote, inferior, end of quote. Of course, wow. She wanted to eliminate Black children. She was very adamant about and public about that. So eugenics was what she was into, and created Planned Parenthood in order to execute.
Isn't it amazing? I thought about that too, that if she came back from the dead, she rose from the grave, she'd be like, we were going to force these people to kill their children. We were going to take their children away to, and abort them. Now they're paying us to do it. I mean, I think she would probably have a big smile on her face. We have people marching on Washington saying, let us kill our children. Whereas back in those days, they were like, leave us alone, let us raise our children. What a dramatic twist. And I think people need to understand, because this is where I hear it all the time. It's the Christian worldview that stands proudly against this kind of view of life, because it's a brutal, tyrannical, very destructive view of life. And we cherish the life of each person. That doesn't mean we always agree with each other, but at least we start from that view that your life has an inherent value. And we respect that going forward. You just said, you pointed out some of the challenges. We just had the Kansas law that did not go into effect, and so Kansas is in essence a pro-abortion state, at least at this moment. Are there other challenges at the legislative point of view that you see that we need to be ready for, or is it kind of a new day and we're just going to have to figure it out as we go along?
Well, now for the first time, we have a real opportunity to protect innocent human life.
Right.
Up until under the time of Roe v. Wade, we could only deal with the abortion issue on the margins, on the edges. And we have three legislatures dealing with these subjects, and that is West Virginia, South Carolina, and Indiana. And overall, we're doing pretty well. Fortunately, in Indiana, we have a special session, and there's a fight over that. The pro-life groups have been opposing the bill that has been put forward because of too many loopholes, too many failures to provide effective enforcement, etc. Right. And up to today, Indiana, the Right to Life groups in Indiana oppose the current bill that has been going forward. Whether that, it may still be fixed. These are never, these are never done deals until the last vote is counted. And sometimes they make significant twists and turns as you go through the process. So, but this is the nature of democracy and representative democracy. Right. People could say they're pro-life in the past and, vote for parental notice, which was very popular. Vote, not to fund abortion, very popular. But now it's really the rubber meets the road. And, we just hope and pray and expect that they will do what they have said they will do all along. And, of course, I live in Indiana, and I none of us have given up on the legislature doing the right thing. And we're still hopeful that that's what happens. We'll know by the end of the week.
Well, one of the things that we at least know now is something that we probably, we were thinking that this case would provide a roadmap for the overturn of Roe, and here they went all the way and overturned it. So that's something to be celebrated, because as I say it this way, I don't know what you think about this, but it removed the veneer of respectability of abortion, because you never had to actually, in a debate or talking, all someone could say is, well, it's a constitutional right, and that kind of ended the discussion. Now you have to talk about what it actually is we're talking about. What is this procedure? What does it do? What is the aftermath? What are the results to the woman and to the child, and all these different things? They actually have to now start to debate what it actually is, and I think that's a good thing. But like you pointed out, the moral perspective on a lot of these issues is learning where to say no properly out of love for other people. And for whatever reason, our culture thinks that libertinism is love. Just doing whatever I want is love. And I'm telling you, the legislature has to put proper boundaries in place for us to live in a civil society. So in this regard, like you said, the real work, the rubber is going to meet the road. Well, Jim, thank you for your work. Thank you for your efforts before the Supreme Court. I know that you were part of the Dobbs case, but again, all the different cases that you've argued, I know you're a person who believes in the constitutional protections of us as individuals, but you also believe in self-government, religiously motivated, self-disciplined, self-governing people. What a concept, right? Yeah, and we've got an opportunity to get back more in that direction now, and we need to seize that opportunity. Well, I think that's a very exciting place to be. So thanks again for being with us today. Thank you. Pleasure talking to you as always. Thanks for tuning in today. To get to know our LCRL-DC work better, check out our website at lcrlfreedom.org. Contained there are resources to empower your public square dynamic discipleship. Or check out our weekly Word from the Center opinion piece every Friday at facebook.com/LCRL Freedom. Till next time, God bless you always. I'm Greg Seltz. Have a great week.
You've been listening to Liberty Action Alert with Greg Seltz, Executive Director of the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty in Washington, D.C. This program has been brought to you by the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty.